Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Asia Think Tank Shark Tank competition. We're thrilled for you to join us today for something that's become a celebrated tradition at Atlas Network since 2012. For close to a decade, this competition has brought some of the most innovative projects from the worldwide freedom movement to the main stage. And each year, the quality of content and level of impact gets better and better, demonstrating the value that friendly competition and ideas sharing brings to our network. Only a few years ago, and thanks to the Smith Family Foundation, we were able to bring this competition to our Asia Regional Liberty Forum. Thank you to our friends at the Smith Family Foundation for your generous support. So, what does it take to win in the world of ideas? Well, sound principles and solid research, sure. But also a talent for conveying these ideas that grabs people's attention, a plan for success, and a well-honed pitch. 3 think tank entrepreneurs have been intensively preparing for this moment. This is their opportunity to pitch their project in front of a panel of judges who will select a single winner of the $10,000 prize. Now, each finalist will have only 5 minutes to make their case. Now, I'd like to invite our esteemed judges to the stage. Judge number 1 is Jeffrey Ng, the president of Cathay Land Inc., the developer of South Forbes Gulf City and Astoria Hotels and Resorts. Mr. Ng is president of UP School of Economics Alumni Association and board director of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry and Foundation for Economic Freedom. Judge number 2 today is Rajesh Jain, a tech entrepreneur based in Mumbai, India. He was a pioneer in Asia's dot-com revolution, creating India World, India's first internet portals in the late 1990s. He then started Netcore, which is today Asia's largest marketing technology company. Finally, we have judge number 3, Simon Lee, managing director and principal consultant at ADVB Public Affairs Consulting, which specializes in strategic communication services for issue management, corporate reputation protection, and public policy advocacy. Now, considering our judges' resumes, I think it's safe to say that they understand how to get the best return on investment out of a dollar. Now that we know our judges, here are the ground rules. Each contestant will take the stage for 5 minutes to present a project their think tank plans to undertake. When the 5 minutes are up, the judges will be invited to grill them with questions. They will determine whether the project has a sound plan, solves a pressing problem, and can be executed effectively within the given budget. Once all contestants have pitched their projects, the judges will convene and award a $10,000 prize to one organisation. The winner of the award will be announced today during the forum's closing remarks at 2:15 p.m. Nepal time. All right, let's get started, shall we? First, we have Andre Suryanta, Associate Researcher at the Centre for Indonesian Policy Studies. Andre, you have 5 minutes to tell the judges about your project, Partnering to Push the Pandemic 2.0.
Oh, thank you, and good day, Sharks. When we come to you, we usually come for something all about Indonesia. But today, I come to you with a problem that all of us are facing at the moment, the COVID-19 pandemic. I saw this cartoon recently on Twitter. Ironic, isn't it? One country has too much vaccine because people are refusing to get the jab, while another is struggling. They're desperate for stock in the face of mounting casualties. Well, this caricature also illustrates that for a mass vaccination drive to work, access and literacy are 2 sides of a coin. And this is what we want to address in our project called the Partnering to Push the Pandemic, or the PPP project in short. We want to improve access by advocating for more public-private partnership in vaccination And we want to contribute to building vaccine literacy as well. You have supported us for the first part of this project, and now we seek your partnership for the second part as well. When the pandemic peaked in Indonesia back in January, so just a few months ago, we had more than 10,000 new cases a day. And January happens to be a month when our government also start our free vaccination drive. But just as this program gets underway and accelerating, and case numbers starts dropping, some countries, some producing countries, block their exports. But fortunately, the government just relaxed the rules, and now companies can buy vaccines for their staff and families. So just when the government program slows down, companies are picking up the slack. Our policy paper, which is funded by the Atlas Network and to be launched soon, advocates for ways to expand this collaboration. We believe that as the private sector gets more involved, then access to vaccine will improve. However, this is only one part of the project. As I told you earlier, we want to do something for the other side of the coin as well. People are hungry for information about COVID-19 and its vaccines. Around a third to half of Indonesians are unsure about these vaccines. And understandable, the pandemic is still new, even scientists are still grappling to understand it, and there's a lot of new information coming up daily. So a WHO survey in Indonesia finds that nearly 80% of the respondents want more information about vaccines, and around half of them look for it on social media. So we are seeking your support to do a series of online videos. The topics are as listed here: the public versus private healthcare capacity, how the private sector resources can help speed up the national vaccination program, and vaccines and the new virus variants. So these will be interviews between a YouTube influencer and a CHIPS researcher or a public health and vaccination experts. We hope that these videos can repeat the success of our online video on food security, which we did a few years ago, that attracts over 80,000 views. Of course, we will leverage on our other social media channels to promote these videos, and naturally, our policy paper will be presented in them. So not only will we engage our audience with contemporary contents, but also we will promote our broader work in this space. Your funding of $10,000 will help cover the production costs of these videos. So this includes research, video production, and marketing. Your support has been instrumental for the first part of the PPP project, and we hope you can partner with us for the PPP 2.0 as well. Together, let us push back this pandemic and avoid more unnecessary deaths by improving vaccine access and literacy. Thank you very much, and I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you, Andre. Fantastic work. Now, judges, you have 5 minutes for your questions. Jeffrey, would you like to kick us off as judge number one?
Okay. I would presume the Indonesian government is going to spend billions of dollars to import and distribute and vaccinate hundreds of millions of Indonesians for free already. With, let's say, $10,000, what do you think you can do that the government cannot do with its billions of dollars already in funding?
Thank you, Jeffrey. So basically, we want to advocate for more private sector involvement in the vaccination program. Yes, our government is spending a lot of money to import the vaccines, but even at the moment, they are having problem with the supply constraint. And the government sort of like locked themselves in by specifying the brands that they can import. But there are hundreds of vaccines out there that's under development, right? So if the private sector can have some freedom to be involved, then there are diversification. And this problem of the vaccine slow rollout can be addressed when the private sector gets more involved. So that's what we want to do. We want to advocate for more private sector involvement, and that's where the $10,000 would go.
Rajesh, do you have a question?
Yes. Andre, my question for you is, how will you handle distribution of content? Because you have a very small budget. Indonesia is a large country. Media, advertising, etc., is very, very, very expensive. celebrities also charge a lot of money. How will you handle the distribution?
Yes, so we actually did the same project before a few years ago. So we engaged a YouTube influencer, which has a lot of followers, and basically he's the one who's going to do the interview with, either our researcher or some experts. And that video itself attracted 80,000 views. We have other videos. We've done this model several times. So on average, we're attracting 20 to 30,000 views. Right. Our own social media channel is also quite well subscribed. So we will promote through those channels as well, right? And actually, because it is an online video, the distribution becomes a little bit easier, to be honest, compared to if we have to do sort of like a film distributed everywhere. So I'm confident that we can actually quite reach a good mileage with that money, with 10,000.
Simon, any questions for Andre?
I have a question about the messaging of the video. What do you see as the biggest challenge or biggest obstacle that you see in conveying the message, convincing the people to be vaccinated, and how your video will address that communication challenge?
Yeah, so the biggest challenge is basically pandemic fatigue. People are just tired of a lot of hoax and a lot of, misinformation, to be honest, right? And that creates a lot of, and even the media also somewhat play a role by highlighting a lot of the negative part or the side effects of the vaccine. So our video will try to present the facts and the positive side of it, right? And try to encourage people to really take up vaccination, instead of being scared of the side effects. I mean, we'll try to highlight that, if you don't get vaccinated, yes, there are side effects for vaccine, but, if you don't get it, you get COVID-19, it's worse. And I think that's important. People often forget that part and just focus on the side effects too much. So, and of course, we want to highlight that the private sector has a role in that. I think that's actually our biggest, and we're a bit lucky that the private sector has been involved and the vaccine actually performs better in a way in the clinical trials. So people has a little bit of a acceptance towards that. And I think we can leverage on that even more with our work.
We have about 1 minute left. Any final questions from our judges for Andre?
Let me go. Andre, quick question for you.
Sure.
How will you measure success, given that the government, of course, is spending a lot of money? How will you measure your success for your project?
Well, first of all, of course, metric-wise, if our video gets a lot of views and a lot of, triggers a lot of conversation, that's actually our metric of success, right? We usually have our social media promoting our work, and then people start commenting and sort of like starting a discussion. And that's what we want. We want to generate discussion. We want to generate this idea that the private sector can help and these vaccines are useful. And if that happens, then we consider ourselves successful in pushing this thing forth into the public space.
Perfect timing, Andre. That's it for us. Thank you very much and good luck. Next up, we have Nur Zulaika Azmi, Research Executive in the Public Finance Unit at Ideas in Malaysia. Nur, let's hear more about your project, Monitoring Power.
So on 24th May 2021, there was a train crash in Kuala Lumpur. 213 passengers injured. The chairman of the state-owned train company, in his press conference the next day, showed total lack of empathy, laughingly described the incident as two cars kissed each other. Two things I want to highlight from this incident, ladies and gentlemen, is state-owned enterprises and politicians. State-owned enterprises have been at the center of numerous scandals in Malaysia. And who are the head of these SOEs? Politicians. Politicians are appointed into positions in state-owned enterprises by the government executive in return for their support. Malaysians are frustrated by these unjustified appointments, but we don't know how many particular appointments are taking place in state-owned enterprises, which is why Ideas is undertaking this project to develop a civic technology platform called Pantau Kuasa. Pantau Kuasa is the Malay for monitoring power will track all political appointments that have taken place in state-owned enterprises. Why is political appointments bad? In Malaysia, the government executive has the full authority to appoint chairman and board of directors in state-owned enterprises. There is no overseeing body to vet or question these appointments, which means the government executive can appoint whoever he wants, regardless of merit and qualification. And that may result in people like Tajudin, who was the chairman of the state-owned company, to be appointed. What if we have the information of all political appointments in one platform? And that is the project I am pitching today. Pantau Kuasa is a collaboration between IDEAS and Malaysia's most popular online news portal, Malaysia Kini, to develop a civic tech platform that will monitor political appointment in state-owned enterprises. So this is the prototype of the platform that will be launched in August this year. It will show all political appointments that have happened, and the public can see who these politicians are and where they were appointed to. We have secured $20,000 from the NGO, the Malaysia Reform Initiative, $10,000 for the website development, and another $10,000 for research. What I am asking you today for another $5,000 to have a mobile optimized version of Pantau Kuasa. So this is what you will get if you try to open the desktop version on your mobile phone. So the visualization and the amount of data is heavy for a mobile to load, which is why, and it will make it hard to navigate, which is why I am asking you for the funding for a mobile optimized version of Pantau Kuasa, which will make the information more accessible to the 93% of Malaysians that uses their smartphones to go online. Our intended impact from providing access to unbiased and digestible information is two. First, we want the government to implement the National Anti-Corruption Plan, which contains guidelines to combat political interference in state-owned enterprises. Secondly, we want the government to set up a parliamentary select committee that will oversee and vet appointments in state-owned enterprises. Now, we just need the public pressure campaign that will push the government to take swift action, and Pantau Kuasa could do it. Tajudin, who was the chairman of the real company I started this presentation with, was sacked after a public online petition with more than 130,000 frustrated Malaysians calling for his resignation. Imagine how great it will be if the information of all political appointments in state-owned enterprises is available to 20 million Malaysians on their smartphones. The public will be more aware and more active in demanding accountability and transparency from the government. We can do away with political appointments in state-owned enterprises.
Thank you very much. That's fantastic, Noura. We really appreciate your presentation. Judges, 5 minutes for your questions. Why don't we kick it off with Rajesh this time? Rajesh?
Zuleika, you said that you want the changes to be done, the two changes that you described. What makes you confident that those in power, those who benefit from the current system, will actually change a system that is working very well for them?
Yes, thank you for your question, Rajesh. The thing is, we see from the sacking of the chairman, the current government, which is a backdoor government, is actually very sensitive to what the public thinks of them. So when there is enough public pressure, they will actually do something. So I think we are not saying that, okay, no more political appointments. But we want this document, the National Anti-Corruption Plan, that has been introduced previously to be implemented. And that actually, I think, is very feasible and something that is very rational for the government to do. And also to have a select committee that will vet these appointments. And we have talked with other members of parliament about this recommendation, and they agree that actually they think there has to be a vetting system or monitoring system.
Simon, any questions?
Hi, I have a question for you about the transmission mechanism that eventually will build up the pressure, because now the project you're talking about is to create a mobile version of the of the visualization. But who do you think will the audience be, and how can they use it so that they can build a bigger pressure? How do you see your product, the role and function in the whole picture of building up the pressure? I want to hear more about that.
Thank you. So our main target group currently are other researchers, other civil society organizations, other journalists, and other activists that are working on this topic of state-owned enterprises. So that is why we are also collaborating with Malaysia Kini, which is Malaysia's most popular online news portal, because we know there are a lot of people who are interested to call for change in state-owned enterprises, but there is just no data available. So that is, for me, my definition of success for this project is when there is collaboration between different stakeholders like other policymakers and other civil society organizations on this project, and then the public also. So other researchers will write about this, about political appointments, and then the public will also write about this. There might be an online petition, there might be Twitter or memes coming out. So people can say, okay, in this government there has been 43 political appointments in just 2 months. So they are empowered and they will call for change. And I think that will move the needle and move the conversation.
Jeffrey, any questions from you?
Yeah, you're also working for the vetting process. Do you think it's politically feasible to have a vetting process for all these political appointments in the SOEs?
Yes. So what we are asking for is to have a parliamentary select committee. So the head of the parliamentary, so we have right now in Malaysia, we already have 10 different parliamentary select committee for different functions. So what we're asking for is for another one, and it will be headed by someone from the opposition party. And there will be members of parliament from the government side and also the opposition side. So whenever there is a new appointment, the list of candidates will go to this committee first before it is approved, and they will be appointed. So to me, this is feasible because state-owned enterprises, especially the statutory bodies, are accountable to the parliament. So they have to report to the parliament once a year, the annual reports. So they are already accountable. So this is just adding that one layer of, in terms of appointments, they also have to go through this process under the parliament before the appointment.
Any very quick final questions from our judges before we wrap up? Great. Well, we're all good. Thank you very much, Noor. We really appreciate your presentation and good luck. Finally, let me introduce Satya Karunaratney, a public policy researcher at the Advocata Institute in Sri Lanka. Satya, will you tell us more about your project, Economic Freedom for Her?
Greetings to all of you. I represent 51.6% of Sri Lanka's female population, even though from a small amount, we form the majority. I represent the historical struggle of Sri Lankan sisters, daughters, wives, mothers, and widows to own and inherit their rightful land and property. The Sri Lankan woman's right to property has been largely ignored and remains unheard by the country's legal system. Much needed reform seems elusive due to the lack of awareness. So we at Advocata consider it our responsibility to be the voice of the voiceless and the unheard, and to advocate for the reformation of these draconian laws. We have titled our efforts towards equality as Freedom for Her. Freedom for Her is a larger project taken up by the Advocata Institute that focuses on the economic empowerment of women. The land inheritance component of this project envisions a Sri Lanka that protects her daughters by securing their access to equal property rights. Only 16% of privately owned land in the island belongs to females. The gender discriminatory land inheritance laws that contributes towards this grim reality is a complex web of the general law and the 3 customary laws, the Kantian law, Thesabalami law, and the Muslim law. The Land Development Ordinance, which is a gender law which contributes towards the gender discrimination here happens under Schedule 3. The customary laws deems that fathers and husbands' claim to land is much larger than that of a daughter or a wife. These laws have also adversely impacted post-war reconciliation efforts and post-tsunami land allocation efforts by disproportionately affecting the already grief-struck females of the island. I now have Attorney at Law Jerusha Thambaya with me to give you practical insight into the issue.
In the northern province of the country, there is a law called Thesawalam law. It deals with inheritance and property rights. It looks to the woman as a party who is unable to manage her properties, and the man as the main manager, and he can even sometimes, according to case law, alienate, sell properties without the consent of his wife. This is clearly seen in the case of Parampalam versus Arunachalam, where the man had affection for his wife. He knew she was a remote, she was not the direct first person in line to get everything that he owned separately in his separate estate. So therefore, he left a note stipulating 10,000 rupees, which was later seen as a promissory note, because otherwise she stood to lose everything at the time of his demise because she was not the direct heir.
The project will help widows and many more women like her. Now, you may wonder how we plan on taking such a task. Well, here's how. Currently, we are drafting a policy brief on the issue with detailed reform recommendations to be distributed to the relevant minister, ministry, and other policy and political figures. Secondly, advocata with demonstrated experience have realized the power of effective communication. Our social media is our strongest weapon. So we are geared to disseminate thought-provoking video explainers, panel discussions, and live debates on the topic with the hope of shifting the overturned window to the likelihood of making these reforms politically possible and viable. Thirdly, we are teaming up with lawyers in the country that are passionate about reforming these laws to draft a bill. This bill will be our tool for long-term reform. And finally, we wish to request parliamentarians to speak of the matter in Parliament with the lead of female parliamentarians and to advocate for the passing of the bill. Our Freedom for Her project has been funded by the Atlas Network. The reason why we are asking for this $10,000 prize is because the scope of the project has grown and the additional legal fees for the project has far exceeded our expectations. With your generosity, we will be able to access quality legal services and consultations and access lawyers that can take this bill to Parliament and policy circles, which will result in real reform. The project has already seen great success. Recently, an event held under the project was attended by the Ministry of Justice, receiving large-scale media coverage. Advocatas' campaign to eliminate taxes on menstrual products resulted in tax reductions. So we are at a great juncture to capitalize on the progress we have made so far. It is evident that Advocata has and will continue to be committed to attaining female economic freedom. The reason why we are so passionate about this is because predominantly our team is female, and we are fortunate enough to be born into liberal centers and environments where our rights are recognized and protected. We envision the same for our sisters that don't necessarily belong to these fortunate segments of society. With your generosity, we envision a Sri Lanka that recognizes her daughters as worthy of property rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Satya. Now we'll kick off with 5 minutes of questions. Simon, why don't you take us away first?
I can see a lot of good works has already been done, but it bears a question on how this $10,000 grant will make a further difference. I mean, two questions in particular. Without this $10,000 grant, I assume you will do the job. You will still continue to carry on this. But how specifically you think this $10,000 will change the project?
Right, thank you very much. So now we've divided the budget components for the project into 4 main categories. That is the funding that will go into the legal consultations that we need, the advocacy component, the research component, and the communications component. Now, for the component where we need much of your financial aid is in the legal component. Now, we've realized that this project has been successful in gaining the attention of the general public and also the media. Here, we've realized that we don't necessarily want to stop by just drafting a bill or just by making a policy brief. We realized that because this has gained a lot of attention from the general public, and because this is a project that has resonated with the general public, that we want to engage with lawyers in the country that are not only passionate about reforming these laws, but who also has a certain level of influence. And in order to access these type of lawyers is where the discussions are already in the way, and to kind of finalize the discussions and plans that we have in the way, that is why we need this $10,000 prize. And also, much of the project is concentrated on the communication efforts. So that also needed, that component of the project will also need some of the finances that we are requesting for. Because we realized that through the communication component of this project plays a very important role. Because many of the women who are impacted by these gender discriminatory land inheritance laws do not even know their rights. So what we intend to do is, firstly, through these communication efforts, we intend on educating these women on why property rights are important, the kind of protection provided to them by the law, and also we wish to advocate for the reformation of these laws by engaging with policymakers and policy implementers. That, in gist, is how we wish to utilize this $10,000 prize in order to reform these gender discriminatory laws, land inheritance laws here in Sri Lanka.
Jeffrey, a question from you.
Yeah, how much of a tipping point or critical support do you think you already have in Parliament in order to push through with these landmark laws in women's rights?
Right, thank you very much. That's a very good question. So like I mentioned in my speech, Freedom for Her is a larger project that has three major components. The first component of the project is gender discriminatory labor laws. The second component is the one that I just spoke of, gender discriminatory land inheritance laws. And the third component is gender discriminatory fiscal policies. Now, we've had a lot of success with regard to the gender discriminatory labor laws. Recently on Women's Day, we held a panel discussion on gender discriminatory labor laws, which was attended by the Minister of Justice. So we were able to receive a lot of kind of support from the general public, the media, and also we've received support from himself. And he had stated that he has expressed his willingness to take up the issue. So currently, Advocata does have relationships with the Parliament and also influential policymakers and policy implementers who are aware that we are working on the issue. And with your kind generosity, we will be able to sort of implement further discussions with them, closed-door discussions, which is a big component of this project. And we ensure with the kind of relationships we have at the moment, we wish to further build on these relationships and actually take this bill to the Parliament and policy circles, which we believe will result in real reform.
Rajesh, a final quick question from you, my friend.
How much time do you think, Satya, you will take to succeed in this project if you get the funding?
Right, thank you very much. That's a great question. So currently, speaking of the progress that we have made so far, like I said it earlier, we have been very successful in sort of getting to the general public and also to the media. And also we have been very successful in getting through to influential policymakers and policy implementers. So in the front of communication and in the front of creating a public discourse, we have been very successful, and that has already been done. And something that would take a longer period of time rather would be the actual reform of the law. For that, we have been successful in creating the public discourse. And secondly, we will have to take it to policymakers and policy implementers. And that is, and after that is when we will actually be able to see the reforms taking place. So currently, we have been successful in creating a public discourse, but making the reform, we will have to continue with the project. And over time, we will see the progress in reforming these laws, these gender discriminatory land inheritance laws.
Perfect timing as we round out our 5 minutes. Thank you, Satya. And that's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. What a show. It's always hard to know whether to clap or snap in these virtual shows, but regardless, well done. And thank you as well to our fantastic judges. They'll convene shortly in an ultra-private and incredibly secure virtual meeting space to discuss and decide on who today's winner is. And gee, I don't envy their job after all that hard work and great presentations. We'll find out who the winner is in just a couple of hours during the closing session. Thank you all for joining us. Now, we have about a 30-minute break before the next concurrent breakouts. So if you haven't already, take some time to break the ice with someone new in the chat. At the bottom right of your screen, you'll see the chat bubble. And if you click on it, you'll be able to see all of our event attendees. I know that I and our Atlas staff here would be thrilled to hear from you. Thanks for watching today's show and enjoy the rest of the program.